This is HealthWise Alternatives with Jackie Bell, promoting good health through information and education.
Hi, welcome to HealthWise. My name is Jackie Bell and I'm your host. HealthWise is a program dedicated to educating women about natural medicine and natural health practices. Today we're going to talk about why go organic, local, or free range. And we've invited a certified health and nutrition counselor back with us. Her name is Sheryl Turgeon. Sheryl, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Sheryl helps women feel more vital and alive through eating whole foods. She has a great understanding about organic foods, the myth about organic foods, and also eating local and free range. Let me tell you a little bit about her educational background. Sheryl has a certification as a health and nutrition counselor from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and Columbia University in New York City. She also has a master's in public health from Boston University with a concentration in behavioral change. She has a BS in psychology from Grand Valley State and a BA in journalism from Oakland University. Sheryl, we're so glad that you're back to talk to us about going organic. And let's start off with just talking a little bit about the difference between organic and non-organic foods. Is there really a big difference between them? And if there is, what is it?
There's a major difference between them.
Besides price?
Yes, and I think as we go along, you'll find that while prices may initially appear to be higher, in the long run, it can even out or actually cost you less.
So larger investment in the front
Right.
is really cost effective in the long run.
Exactly.
Great.
Organic foods do not have pesticides, and that is the main reason that you want to eat organic. However, many small farms don't have the resources to go through the organic certification process. So when you want to buy local, which I highly recommend, when you eat local, you're really getting as close from the field to the table as you possibly can, and that means you're getting the most nutrients that you can out of that fresh food.
So having the distance be closer than the quality of the foods, the timing from the field to the table
Exactly.
is relative to the quality of the nutrition that you're getting.
Yes, it
Okay.
is. So I would recommend that, as well as free-range animals. When you're asking for free range, you're really looking at an animal living in a more humane environment in which they eat what is more natural to them, which would be grasses, and they have enough room to roam and eat as an animal should.
Right, so it's not as dirty.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not stressful and confined.
Right. Yeah, okay, that makes sense too. So the main difference then, just to repeat, is basically the chemical, the chemical content of non-organic foods versus organic.
Right.
And then also preferably a local organic food or locally grown food would have a higher nutrition because it's coming to your table quicker.
Exactly. And my point about eating local is that many local farms use organic practices. However, they have not been able to afford to apply for the certification as an organic farm.
Oh, that's a legal or licensing?
It's actually a process that takes 3 years and can be very expensive for a small farmer.
So what does certified organic mean? Why would it be so important for a farmer who's not using chemicals to strive to get that certification?
Well, I think it's because it's now a national certification with national standards. So there is some consistency to what certified organic means. And I'd actually like to read the official description of certified organic for you.
Okay.
To be labeled organic, all fresh or processed foods sold in the United States, including imports, must be produced according to the national organic standards and certified by an inspection agency accredited by the USDA. Before their crops can be certified, all organic farmers must use only approved materials that will not harm humans, animals, or soil life. They must develop an organic farm management plan, keep detailed records, and be inspected annually by an accredited certification agency. All companies that manufacture organic food products must follow strict similar requirements. The standards prohibit the use of all of the following potentially unhealthy materials and practices. That includes toxic synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, genetically engineered seeds or other materials, sewage sludge, fresh manure, animal confinement, irradiation, antibiotics and growth hormones. And it's really used as a safety net to ensure that all farms that are assuming that organic label comply with all of these requirements. The exemption to this is small farms or individuals that are selling less than $5,000 worth of organic food. You can sell that and be growing it organically, and you don't need certification.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really interesting. So all those terms like irradiation, pesticides, growth hormones, those are all buzzwords in the realm of organic and natural foods. So what does organic mean in terms of meat and milk? Because when organic first hit the market, we mostly were aware of organic vegetables. Mm-hmm. And it's only really been in the past, I would say 5 years or more, that we've had so much discussion around and certification and labeling, thank goodness, around meat and milk. Could you explain why, what organic means in terms of the meat and milk industry?
Sure. It really means that the cows have not received any growth hormones or antibiotics, so that your meat, milk, and eggs are free of them.
Okay.
The antibiotics are especially important because as more people are exposed to the antibiotics through the foods that they eat as well as medicinal purposes,
right,
the germs become more resistant to antibiotics, and that can cause big problems for us down the line.
Okay. So the growth hormones, that affects our health as well, doesn't it?
It does. It does actually make us grow taller, but these are hormones, and hormones can upset the balance of our own hormones.
So the point then is that the antibiotics and the hormones that the cows or the meat is getting, and therefore the milk is getting, then we in turn are ingesting, and it's very adverse to our health in the long run.
You know the saying, you are what you eat? Well, there's also a saying that you are what you eat, and what you eat eats, and what, you could go all the way down the line.
So organic, that's pretty clear then for meat and milk. What about free range? What does free range mean?
Well, free range really means that the livestock are able to act like livestock. They're not confined in a small pen.
Okay.
They're able to roam and eat generally what's natural to them, which is the grasses.
So for instance, a chicken farm or chicken ranch would be a perfect example, because the chickens are in a huge facility, are kept in cages, they never touch the ground.
Right.
They're very controlled on what they eat and when their waste is cleaned out and how they're sprayed down for lice and bugs and so forth. Whereas you're saying that free-range eggs from free-range chickens, they're allowed to scrub around and look for, just behave as they would if they were on grandma's farm, right?
Right, and I think, there is a theory that the energy in the animals, if they're living, as we say, a good life and are stress-free, we're getting a much healthier animal that we're ingesting.
Right. So
Whereas ingesting a product that has been under very stressful conditions, that goes into us as well.
that's a really interesting point, because we're always concerned about, the antibiotics and the hormones. We forget about the stress level of the animal that it has to undergo, and that being transferred to us as well.
Right.
Okay. But I guess the biggest argument and the biggest restriction for most of us eating organic would be the price. So you mentioned that before. Can you get into a little bit about the long-term benefits of investing in organic food in our groceries?
Yes, as a matter of fact, an author named Colleen Huber wrote an article. She actually went out and did a test for herself and her family with 3 teenage children. And 1 week, she set up specific rules, and if anyone would like to look up the article, I think it's worth reading. 1 week, she ate the processed foods. And the next week, she ate nothing but the organic foods. What she was able to do when eating the organic foods was to have leftovers and maybe add a couple of fresh new ingredients to change the taste, but able to make more meals out of that, which helped to reduce the price of the organic foods. She actually ended up saving not much. It came out almost even, but she
that's
did
important.
save a little bit of money
Yes.
by buying organic. And of course, in the long run, what we're talking about is saving our health and talking about the costs, rising costs of healthcare, and what you could end up spending
Right.
if you're eating foods that are chemically processed.
And there's also the fact about organic, that is organic farming practices. With organic farming practices, you incorporate rebuilding the soil, letting the soil go to rest, laying a cover crop, turning that in, growing crops that feed the soil depending on what you've just harvested. So you're putting back into the soil. So you're actually getting a higher nutritional count per vegetable or legume, whatever you're eating. And so it's I've heard one physician say eating organic and eating especially locally grown with good soil, you know that you probably have to take fewer supplements. And so if you combine your supplement intake, the cost of that with the price you're paying for your groceries, it would probably come out a lot less in the long run, like you're saying, because of the high nutritional content. Do you find that as well?
It really helps. I think we have a ways to go because of the over-farming practices that our country has experienced for a long period of time. And in general, what we are eating is nowhere near the nutritional value that our parents or grandparents ate. So supplementation does help with that. But hopefully, eventually, enough farms will be fulfilling the practices you just described, so we can get back to where they were.
Yeah, and I think that brings up the topic of eating locally grown food in comparison with organically grown on a large scale. We're seeing more organic food in the grocery store, such as dairy products, yogurt and butter and milk. But those all come from very large companies. So tell us a little bit about locally grown food.
Well, I think, number one, buying locally grown food is supporting the small farmer who can really help us to turn our own lives around in terms of health, because they are rotating their crops and they are going back to the practices that work with nature versus against nature.
Right.
Secondly, the more quickly we can get a fruit, vegetable, piece of any kind of produce from the field to the table, the more nutrients we're able to eat.
Okay.
And that's extremely important for us. We really need to continue this practice for the sustainability of our land and for the independent farmers that bring back the culture of knowing where our food came from and knowing who grew it and being responsible for that, so you know that the lady down the street is drinking your milk, for example.
Right. So this is kind of turning the subject a little bit, but will eating organic foods help someone lose weight?
It can. It can, in that many of the chemicals that are in processed foods, such as high fructose corn syrup, contribute to obesity and other issues. Whereas the organically grown foods, when you're eating whole foods, your body is getting all the nutrients that it needs. When it's not, it keeps looking for those nutrients. So you could eat a bag full of potato chips and get lots of calories, but because there's so little nutrition in it, your body is still craving more. Whereas if you eat the whole food, it will let you know that it's satisfied.
So tell us a little bit about how people can get their families to start eating organic.
Well, it really needs to be a gradual process, especially if you have teens living at home. My sister often talks about her teenage kids and how her son, if he hears the word organic, already has decided he doesn't like it. What you really need to do is make it fun. Part of that is involving your family. I would first have a talk about how we want to do this, that we want to get healthier and eat healthier foods. Then start getting them involved in helping you select and prepare the food. If you have young children, you can really start playing with it. Broccoli, for example, looks like a little tree. So you start talking to them about the trees and eating the broccoli, that looks like a tree.
Right.
And some mothers have found that hiding the organic foods in with something else that they like to start with helps to develop a taste for organic.
Right.
There's a study that was done in New York City several years ago where they actually had a group of people that stayed in a hotel in New York City for 1 week. The rules were that there were no television, no newspapers, no radio, and they would all come in and eat in a common area. Now, on one side of the room was every bit of fast food you could imagine. It was junk food heaven. On the right side of the room was fresh, organic, whole foods. Well, as people first went in, everybody gravitated to the left side of the room and just enjoyed the fast food. As the week wore on, people started gradually going over to the right side and grabbing some fresh fruit or a salad. By the end of that week, with no outside advertising, the entire group had shifted over to the right side.
Interesting.
And I think that just shows us that our bodies naturally know what we need to eat, given half the chance.
Right. Instead of being told what to believe or think from the outside world. Interesting. It reminds me of animals when animals are sick, especially if you've ever done any animal husbandry or had a horse. They will, if they're sick, they'll wander around and look for the right herbs to eat to make themselves feel better.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Same thing.
With all the conflicting information in the media, it gets confusing on how to eat healthy and how not to. So what would your suggestion be for an individual to get started on a path to healthy eating?
I'd recommend they start with just some of the basics. Eating whole grains like brown rice, eating fresh whole foods, whether it's broccoli, cauliflower, or I really encourage my clients to experiment and try eating something new, whether it's Swiss chard or kale or something that they haven't tried before. And start eating a little bit more of the fish that does not contain the mercury. By the way, there's a website, the environmentalworkinggroup.org, that lists both the seafoods in order of from best to worst and the produce and what you can buy organically and what has pesticides but is not the worst as far as absorption.
Wow.
So I would recommend they just start there and just start trying a few things. And I found that one step at a time is key. Mm-hmm. If we overwhelm our bodies with too much at once, just like our kids, we'll rebel.
Okay. And so incorporating the things that you had talked about, the free range,
yes,
and organic foods, and the dairy that might not have the hormones in it, that type of thing, maybe one thing at a time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, the concern is the amount of time that it takes to prepare healthy foods. Can you comment on or give us a few tips on how we can get over that obstacle?
Sure. I think it's really not as time consuming as you might think. For example, I cook stir fries. I might have, one night we may have a roast. Well, the next night I might have a stir fry with all fresh vegetables. And it's a way to use the roast from the night before and add that in. And maybe put that over quinoa, which is a whole grain that only takes 15 minutes to cook. Some of the other things you can do is to just have some fresh snacks around. Cut up some carrots, cut up some celery, some cucumber, other veggies, and put them in little plastic bags so that when you're hungry, you just dip into those. There are several different ways you can do this.
I find too that if I have the fresh vegetables, if there's some kind of a dip that we can play with the food in, even the kids will tend to eat that.
They really do. So it really doesn't take all that long. And over in France and Italy, where they really enjoy their food, we talk about the French paradox. And it really maybe should be the American paradox, because the French can eat all kinds of foods and they stay healthy.
Yeah.
But what they're doing that we're not is they're getting together as a family, slowing down, taking the time out to enjoy their meal together, socializing together, and feeling much better about their food. The food is part of their tradition. It's part of their lifestyle.
Right.
And maybe if we brought a little more of that into our lives, we could sit back and enjoy it a little more and not have the indigestion that we can get.
So cutting out eating food behind the wheel,
Yes.
driving, would be one way to start the process towards healthy living, right?
It sure would.
So what are, just to kind of summarize, what are some of the benefits of making a switch to organic?
Oh, there are so many. You start to feel better. Your skin starts to look better. Your hair will actually look better. Lots of times people lose weight by eating healthy whole foods. And you're really nourishing your cells. And when you start nourishing the cells, they can fight off viruses, fight off disease much better. Your immune system gets stronger. So you're just living a healthier, happier lifestyle, really.
And I think too, as we talk more on HealthWise in upcoming shows about holistic health approaches to different health conditions that we might be faced with, we'll find that the holistic approach always includes good nutrition, because that is the foundation for providing the cells with the materials they need to build healthy cells and to have healthy metabolic processes occur. It's essential in our body's ability to healing itself is having the right nutrition. Sheryl, I want to thank you again so much for coming back and sharing with us your insights about organic food and free-range, locally grown food. It's been such a pleasure to have you. I think all of us have benefited from your coming. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for coming and joining us on HealthWise, and we look forward to seeing you at our next show. This season on HealthWise Alternatives, we will be interviewing holistic medical doctors, practitioners, and counselors who will explain natural medicine approaches to health and disease. HealthWise Alternatives is created by The Woman in You and Take One Films. Check our website, thewomaninyou.info, for scheduling information or contact your local cable access.